Hello, I'm Ted Pike, and this is my wife, Lynn. In 1988, an evangelical pastor in Sweden opened his Bible to the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. He informed his congregation, which included a homosexual, that God is still angry at sexual perversion and will judge those who practice it. Several months later, this pastor was serving a sentence in jail. He had violated Sweden's anti-hate statute, a law that protects groups, such as homosexuals, from verbal violence. Verbal violence includes public statements which might cause them embarrassment because of their sexual orientation.
It is well known that socialist Sweden is the trendsetter in human engineering. What happens there will probably be taken for granted through much of the world 10 or 15 years later. But laws in America banning criticism of others? It can't happen, most will reply. Not with free speech guaranteed by the Constitution, but it can. A hidden agenda toward ultimately restricting free speech surfaced among bills introduced in Congress in the summer of 2000. Hate crimes legislation was proposed as a first step toward banishing prejudice in America. This bill, deceptively titled the Local Law Enforcement Enhancement Act of 2000, passed the Senate, but was voted down in the House. If it had passed, it could have laid the foundation for an anti-hate bureaucracy identical to Sweden's, a bureaucracy which would redefine prejudice so as to make the Christian a lawbreaker.
But the threat is not over. As Congress has reconvened in 2001, the backers of this bill, undaunted, have resubmitted another very similar bill. Here's how our free speech is coming under attack. Anti-hate legislation is the brainchild of the ultra-powerful Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, or ADL. In this building behind me is the Seattle branch of the ADL, one of 30 nationwide local branches. Like spokes in a wheel, local offices follow directives and report back to the hub, which is the national headquarters in New York City. The ADL portrays itself as a Jewish civil liberties organization dedicated to protecting Jews from anti-Semitism. As we will see in this video, its long-term goal is to silence Christian and conservative political thought. On the 7th floor of this building, information is gathered throughout the Pacific Northwest concerning those the ADL considers a threat to its agenda, or in ADL terminology, those who are prejudiced. Inside, computers store thousands of secret files on right-wing conservative Americans, most of whom may never have committed a crime, except perhaps criticizing the State of Israel. That is why even people's home addresses, driver's licenses, social security numbers, and personal information are listed in these files, so that they can be identified quickly when such so-called prejudice actually comes to be against the law of the land. Such Americans did not give the ADL permission to keep a secret dossier on them, but the ADL does it anyway. It's part of the ADL's database on right-wing organizations, a database which the ADL shares not only with the FBI and Justice Department, but with local police, such as here in King County. Like the ancient Pharisees, whom Christ described as whitewashed on the outside, the ADL gives the impression of a Jewish civil liberties organization with high-minded intentions. Yet inside these walls are persons with a very different goal, not the elimination of hate, but the eventual elimination of free expression of Christian conservative values. Here is how the ADL has been working to achieve that goal. During 1988, the ADL initiated a nationwide law student competition to write a model anti-hate law for America. This law would criminalize not just physical acts of racial violence, but statements that might lead to violence. On April 20th through the 22nd of 1988, the ADL helped sponsor a conference at New York's prestigious Hofstra University. It was entitled Group Defamation and Freedom of Speech, the Relationship Between Language and Violence. The winner of the hate crimes competition was announced as Joseph Ribicoff, a law student from Whittier College in California. The invitation to draft a group libel statute was a serious national competition with students from the finest law schools in America competing. As such, when the ADL gave first prize to Joseph Ribicoff above many rivals, it tells us that the ADL jury liked very much what Ribicoff proposed. They saw Ribicoff's hard-line legislative approach to group libel as a direction they wanted to explore. This is obvious because the second and third place winners were not nearly so harsh and repressive of free speech as Ribicoff. Let's review what the ADL found so agreeable within Ribicoff's proposal. First, Ribicoff asserts that just banning acts of hate-motivated violence is not enough. The words that stimulate suspicion, friction, hate, and possible violence must also be criminalized. Yet what are words but the outward expression of ideas? Ribicoff wants to ban those seed ideas which might conceivably be used as a pretext for bigotry and violence. To enforce this ban on ideas, the ADL clearly favors Ribicoff's next proposal, state censorship. According to Ribicoff, state agencies should not only monitor and restrict free speech in general, but should censor all movies and videotapes that criticize identifiable groups.
Any person, persons, or organization that publicly shows a film or movie before it has been submitted and reviewed by the agency shall have committed a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor means a crime. A crime committed requires a law enforcement, legal, and penal establishment capable of punishing that crime. Again, the ADL looks with favor upon such law enforcement bureaucracy to prevent thought crimes. In Canada, if one is accused of defaming an identifiable group and confesses quickly, he may be fined up to $5,000 and serve up to 2 years in prison. If he does not confess his guilt, he will be embroiled in costly legal entanglements. If he loses, he will again have to face fines and possible imprisonment. Because the ADL gave first prize to such a system of harassment and prosecution, there is every indication that the ADL is delighted with Ribicoff's get-tough proposals to criminalize thought crimes.